Infertile, divorced, failure. The words glowed on a 10FT screen at my sister's wedding reception. 200 guests laughed. My father smiled and said, "Just a joke, sweetheart." My mother swirled her wine like she was watching dinner theater. And my sister, the bride, leaned into her microphone and said, "Don't laugh too hard, she might actually cry." I didn't cry. I picked up my phone, typed one word, "Begin." And the room went so silent you could hear the ice cracking in my mother's glass. What happened next didn't just ruin the party. It dismantled 16 years of lies and the family reputation built on top of them. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story and drop a comment. Where are you watching from and what time is it there? My name is Carol. I'm 34 years old. Now let me take you back 4 weeks before that wedding. It's 11 p.m. on a Thursday. I'm at my desk in Columbus. Coffee's cold. Back aches. Normal Thursday. My phone lights up. Unknown number. Ohio area code, but not Columbus. Somewhere smaller. Somewhere I used to know. My name is Nancy Webb. I'm a nurse at Riverside Hills Care Center. Your grandmother asked me to call you. Grandma Dorothy, 84 years old. The only person in my family who ever made me feel like I belonged in it. She's scheduled for hip replacement surgery in 3 weeks. The risks at her age are real. She's been asking for you. And then, there's something else. Your father told Dorothy you can visit, but only if you attend your sister's wedding first. Of course. Everything with Gerald comes with conditions. One more thing. Your grandmother wanted you to know they're planning something at the reception. Something about you. She wanted you to be ready. I looked up from my phone. On the wall across from my desk hung a framed certificate. Ohio Emerging Architect of the Year. 5 years of silence, and the first voice I hear from that town isn't my mother's. It's a nurse's. To understand what happened next, I need to go back. 16 years further. I'm 18. Senior year. My father slides a document across the kitchen table. A land transfer form. A 2-acre parcel my grandmother Dorothy gave me on my 16th birthday. Signed over legally. "This is yours, Carol. No matter what." Gerald wants it for his Maplewood development project. I look at my mother. Barbara sits at the end of the table, flipping through a home decor magazine. She doesn't look up. I don't sign. 3 days later, Gerald cancels my college tuition fund. I find out when the registrar's office sends a letter. 1 week after that, he stands in the foyer. You walk out that door, you don't come back. My little sister Diane, 11 years old, watches from the top of the stairs. She doesn't say anything. She just watches. I leave with 1 duffel bag and $43. That night, Gerald tells the neighbors I dropped out. Ran off with some boy. Broke my mother's heart. None of it was true. But in Clarksburg, my father's word was the only one that mattered. Here's what actually happened after that door closed. I slept in my car for 2 weeks. Worked a gas station counter. Got my GED at 19 while waitressing double shifts at a diner that smelled like bacon grease and bleach. Applied to community college. Transferred to Ohio State University on a need-based scholarship. I graduated at 23. Nobody came to the ceremony. I wore my cap and gown, walked across the stage, shook the dean's hand, then went home to my studio apartment and ate takeout on the floor. At 24, I married Robert Halpern, a man I'd met through my father's old business network before I was cast out. Charming in public, suffocating in private. A smaller, quieter version of my father. I got out at 27. At 28, a doctor told me I couldn't have children. I processed that alone in a clinic waiting room with fluorescent lights and a 2-year-old magazine. Now I'm 34. Senior architect at Carson and Webb Associates in Columbus. I design restorations of historic buildings, courthouses, libraries, theaters. I didn't hide my life from my family to be dramatic. I just stopped performing for people who'd already decided I was nothing. Nobody in Clarksburg knew any of this. The morning after Nancy's call, I closed my office door. My colleague Frank Reyes was at his desk, headphones on. Ex-Army IT. The most unflappable person I've ever met. Also the closest thing I have to family. I knocked on his glass wall. I need a favor. He listened to everything. The wedding, the slideshow warning, the nursing home ultimatum. When I finished, he leaned back. If you go with a plan, not with hope. I know, and you're going. She's 84, Frank. She might not make it through surgery, he nodded. Then we make sure you're not walking in blind. That night, Frank did his own research. The reception venue, Clarksburg Country Club, had hired a local AV company. They were short-staffed. They just posted looking for a freelance tech. Frank, I already applied. Got a call back in 20 minutes. You don't have to do this, Carol. You're walking into a room where your family has already loaded a weapon. I'm just making sure you have access to the safety switch. By Wednesday, Frank was confirmed as the freelance AV technician for the Whitmore Marsh wedding reception. Direct access to the projector, the USB inputs, and the soundboard. I prepared a short presentation. Not an attack, just the truth. Photos, degrees, awards, my actual life. Title slide, The Real Carol Marsh. I saved it to a USB drive and handed it to Frank. You're not going to war, Carol. I know, but if they fire the first shot, I'll be ready to fire the last. Gerald required a family dinner first. His condition before clearing my name at the nursing home. So I drove 2 hours to Clarksburg. The house hadn't changed. White columns, manicured lawn, American flag by the door. The performance of respectability down to the last trimmed hedge. Nobody hugged me at the door. Barbara looked me over. You look thin. Are you eating? Gerald sat at the head of the table. So, what are you doing with yourself these days? I work at a design firm. Answering phones, I assume. I picked up my fork. Didn't correct him. Diane arrived late, trailing perfume and self-importance. She pulled me aside in the hallway. I need you to wear something understated at the wedding. Bradley's family is very particular. She tilted her head. You still alone? No one, I said nothing. She smiled. Some people just aren't meant for that, I guess. Before I left, Barbara handed me a garment bag. Inside, a pale beige dress. Shapeless. 2 sizes too large. This will be perfect for you. At the door, Gerald put his hand on my shoulder. The Whitmores are old money. They judge. One wrong move and this deal dies. Don't embarrass us. I drove back toward the highway. And then the name hit me. Whitmore. I knew that name, not from Diane's ring, not from Gerald's business talk. I knew it from a project file sitting in my office in Columbus. Back at my desk Monday morning, I pulled up the client database. Whitmore Heritage Foundation. Our firm had been contracted for the Clarksburg Heritage Restoration Project, converting a Civil War-era textile mill into a community arts center. The client contact, Margaret Whitmore, chair of the foundation. Bradley Whitmore's mother. I had been the lead architect on this project for 6 months. We'd exchanged dozens of emails, 3 video calls. She knew my work, my design philosophy, my project timeline. She knew C. Marsh. She did not know my face. We'd never met in person. I sat with this for a long time. I don't weaponize connections. I'm not Gerald, but I filed it away. If everything fell apart in that room, I was not a stranger to the most powerful woman in it. 1 week before the wedding, Gerald cleared my name at the front desk. 30 minutes. Supervised. Barbara would accompany me. Riverside Hills smelled like hand sanitizer and boiled vegetables. Barbara parked herself in a chair in the hallway, already texting. She didn't come in. Grandma Dorothy was smaller than I remembered, her white hair thinner. Her hands shook. But her eyes, those sharp, knowing eyes, hadn't changed. She grabbed my hand the second I sat down. Let me look at you. You're healthy, you're strong, I can tell. I'm good, Grandma. Don't let them break you again. Her grip tightened. You're the strongest one in this family. You always were. She reached under her pillow and pulled out a small envelope. Inside, a photocopy of a property deed. The 2-acre parcel. My name clear as day. That land is yours. It always was. Your father never got it transferred. He's been telling people it's part of Marsh Properties for years, but it's not. He never had the right. A knock on the door. Barbara's voice. Time's up. I folded the envelope into my jacket pocket. I kissed Dorothy's forehead. That's my girl, she murmured. I walked out past my mother, who didn't ask how Dorothy was doing. She checked her lipstick and said, "Let's go. I have a fitting." I left the nursing home with two things: a grandmother's blessing, and proof that my father had been lying about more than just me. 6 days before the wedding, Frank sat on my couch, laptop open, scrolling through the slideshow I'd built. Slide 1, me in my cap and gown at graduation. Alone, smiling anyway. Caption, no one came to my graduation. I went anyway. Slide 2, my architecture license. Licensed architect, state of Ohio. Slide 3, me on a job site, hard hat on, blueprints under my arm. Senior architect, Carson and Webb Associates. Slide 4, the award plaque. Ohio Emerging Architect of the Year. Slide 5, white text on black, you called me a dropout. I have a master's degree. You called me broke. I own my home. You called me a failure. I design buildings for a living. Frank nodded. Clean, factual, no insults, just the record. That's the point. I don't want to attack them. I want the truth to be louder than their joke. What's the trigger? I showed him. A text message pre-typed on my phone. One word, begin. When I sent it, Frank would switch the USB. He'd already tested the system during setup at the venue. The swap would take 3 seconds. And if their slideshow turns out to be harmless, then I never send it. We leave. I visit Dorothy. We drive home. Frank looked at me for a long time. You know they won't keep it harmless. I know, but I need to give them the chance. One last chance to be decent. Because when this is over, I want to be completely sure I didn't fire first. 5 days before the wedding, Gerald called with rules. Sit at table 14, back corner. Don't speak to the Whitmores unless spoken to. If anyone asks what you do, say you work reception at a small firm. And after the wedding, I can see Grandma Dorothy? We'll see. Depends on your behavior. The line went dead. That evening, Diane added me to a family group chat. The first message was a preview of the slideshow. I watched the images load. Old photos of me stretched and filtered to look unflattering. Cartoon stickers slapped across them. And then the labels, one per slide, bold and centered. High school dropout, divorced, broke, alone, infertile. Diane typed beneath the preview. OMG, this is going to be hilarious. Don't worry, Carol, it's all in good fun. Barbara responded. Keep it tasteful, Diane. Not take it down, not this is wrong, just keep it tasteful. As if there's a tasteful way to broadcast your daughter's medical history to 200 strangers. Gerald didn't respond at all. I screenshotted every message and sent them to Frank without comment. Then I opened my laptop. My own presentation was still up. 5 clean, factual slides. I added a 6th. A quote, white text on black. The measure of a family is not how they celebrate their best. It's how they treat their most vulnerable. I stared at the word infertile on my phone screen for a long time. Then I closed the group chat. There was nothing left to say to people who thought your body was a punchline. The wedding day arrived under a clear October sky. I wore my navy dress, not the beige sack my mother had picked out. I'd left that hanging in the hotel closet without a second thought. Inside Clarksburg Community Church, 200 guests filled the pews. Clarksburg's business community, country club members, and in the front row, the Whitmores, Margaret in a deep green jacket, silver hair pinned back, her husband Richard beside her, distinguished, reserved. I sat in the last pew. No one greeted me. Gerald worked the center aisle like a campaign trail. So proud of my little girl. He didn't mean me. Barbara floated near the altar. Both my daughters are here today, even the difficult one. She laughed lightly. The friend beside her glanced toward the back. I pretended not to notice. Near the side entrance, Frank adjusted a microphone cable on the altar. Our eyes met for half a second. the smallest nod. My father shook hands like a politician. My mother smiled like a hostess. And I sat in the last row like a ghost they'd invited on purpose. The reception was at Clarksburg Country Club. Crystal chandeliers, round tables in white linen, a 10-foot projection screen behind the head table, the smell of gardenias and money. Table 14, back corner, next to the kitchen door. Every time a server pushed through, a blast of clattering dishes and shouted orders hit my back. On stage, Diane took the microphone for the first toast. She thanked her parents, the Whitmores, her wedding planner, her florist. Then she looked toward the back of the room, and my sister Carol, who managed to show up today. That's something, right? Scattered laughter. The polite kind. The kind where people aren't sure if they're supposed to, so they do anyway. My mother appeared at my elbow. Don't drink too much, don't talk about yourself. And for God's sake, smile. I smiled. Not because she told me to, because in 20 minutes the slideshow was scheduled to play, and I knew exactly what was on it. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever been seated at the back, literally or figuratively, by people who were supposed to love you? Not the kind of exclusion you question. The kind you're told is normal. Tell me in the comments. Because what happens next at this reception, with that screen and those 200 guests, is the reason I'm telling you this story today. Stay with me. The lights dimmed. The maid of honor took the microphone with a grin. And now, a special presentation from the Marsh family. The screen flickered. Soft piano music through the speakers. Baby photos of Diane, ballet recital, prom. The Marshes on vacation, Barbara in a sun hat, Gerald with his arm around Diane, the ocean behind them. I was not in a single photo. Then the couple photos. Diane and Bradley at a vineyard. At Christmas dinner with the Whitmores. Each one earned a round of soft applause. The music shifted. Playful. A drumroll sound effect. The screen read, "And now let's meet the rest of the family." Diane grinned from the head table. She caught my eye across the room and wiggled her fingers in a little wave. Barbara leaned back with the satisfied look of someone waiting for the main course. Under the table, my phone was already in my hand. The message to Frank typed and ready. One word, begin. I made myself a promise. If the next slide was harmless, a gentle caption, a real toast, even a scrap of decency, I wouldn't press it. I'd take the joke. I'd go home. I'd let them have their night. I gave them one last chance. The screen changed. My face filled the frame. An old photo from high school, unflattering. And across the bottom, bold white letters. High school dropout nervous laughter rippled through the room. A few people glanced at me. I kept my face still. Next slide. A cracked heart emoji. Divorced. The laughter grew louder. The kind that feeds on itself. Next. An animated cartoon of an empty wallet flapping open. Broke. Next. A single place setting. One chair, one plate. Alone. Diane was laughing from the head table. Barbara sipped her wine, watching the room like she was scoring a performance. Then the final slide loaded. A clip art baby with a red X stamped across it. Infertile. The word filled the 10-foot screen. For a moment the room went quiet. The shocked kind. Then a few more laughs broke through. Diane leaned into the microphone. Don't laugh too hard, she might actually cry. Barbara swirled her wine, eyes on me. Gerald caught my gaze from the head table. Just a joke, sweetheart. Lighten up. Margaret Whitmore was not laughing. I could see it clearly from across the room. She set her glass down with a quiet click. Her jaw tightened. She looked at Gerald, then at the screen, then at me, my medical history, my private grief, projected for 200 strangers to laugh at. That was the line, and they didn't just cross it. They broadcast it in 10-foot letters. I looked down at my phone, the message still there. One word, begin. I thought about Dorothy, her hands shaking when she gave me that envelope. Don't let them break you again. I'm not breaking. My thumb pressed send. 3 seconds, the slideshow froze. The screen went black. Diane frowned. Tech issues. She waved toward the back of the room. Can someone fix that? Behind the AV booth, Frank pulled Diane's USB from the projector and inserted mine. His hands were steady. He'd done harder things under worse pressure. The screen lit up again, white text on a dark background. Clean, simple, the real Carol Marsh. The room went silent, not the polite kind. The kind where every head turns and every conversation stops at once. Gerald stood up. What is this? Turn it off. He looked toward the AV booth. Frank didn't move. The system remote had been locked. The only way to kill it was the power cable in the utility closet, and Frank had locked that door 20 minutes ago. For the first time in 16 years, my father could not silence me. The first slide filled the screen. Me at graduation, cap and gown, standing alone in front of the university seal. No one came to my graduation. I went anyway. Murmurs. A woman at table 3 put her hand over her mouth. Next, my architecture license. Licensed architect, state of Ohio. The murmurs grew. Next, me on a construction site, hard hat, steel-toed boots, blueprints rolled under my arm. The skeleton of a renovated courthouse behind me. Senior architect, Carson and Webb Associates. A man near the front turned in his chair to look at me, then another, then a whole table. Next, the award plaque. Ohio Emerging Architect of the Year. Margaret Whitmore's hand froze halfway to her glass. The final slide appeared. White text on black. You called me a dropout. I have a master's degree. You called me broke. I own my home. You called me a failure. I design buildings for a living. I stood up from table 14. I didn't walk to the stage. I didn't grab a microphone. I just stood where I was in the back corner next to the kitchen door and looked toward the front of the room. Gerald's face was a shade I'd never seen before, somewhere between fury and fear. This is ridiculous. She probably faked all of this. Diane's smile was gone. Turn it off. This is my wedding. Barbara sat frozen, her wine glass suspended in midair, her face drained of color. The last slide appeared, the quote I'd added 5 days ago. The measure of a family is not how they celebrate their best. It's how they treat their most vulnerable. I didn't say a word. The screen was doing all the talking. Gerald moved fast. Both hands raised, his country club smile locked in place. Folks, I apologize for the interruption. My older daughter has always had a flair for drama. He walked toward me. The crowd parted slightly, the way people do when they sense a collision coming. When he reached table 14, he lowered his voice. Not enough. Sit down right now, or you will never see your grandmother again. I looked at my father. 62 years old, builder of houses, destroyer of daughters. You've used Grandma Dorothy as a leash my whole life. That ends tonight. His jaw clenched. I will call security. From the head table, a chair scraped back. Bradley Whitmore stood up. Wait, he looked at Gerald, then at me. Let her speak. Diane grabbed his arm. Bradley, he pulled free. Something isn't right here, Diane. I want to hear this. The room shifted. I could feel it, the energy tilting, the way a crowd recalibrates when someone unexpected breaks rank. Barbara rose from her seat, voice cracking. Carol, please, you're humiliating yourself. I looked at my mother, the woman who flipped magazine pages while my father threw me out. The woman who handed me a shapeless dress and told me to blend into the walls. No, Mother. For the first time, I'm not. Margaret Whitmore moved through that room like she owned it. And in a way, she did. Half the people there owed her foundation a grant, a favor, or a seat on a board. She stopped 3 feet from me. Her eyes moved from my face to the screen where senior architect, Carson and Webb Associates was still glowing. C. Marsh. She said it like she was confirming something she'd already suspected. You're the architect on the Clarksburg Heritage Project. Yes, ma'am. Margaret turned slowly, the way a woman turns when she wants a room to see exactly where she's looking. She faced Gerald. Her voice was steady and surgical. Mr. Marsh. The woman you just humiliated in front of my family is the architect I hired to restore the most important building in this town. The color drained from Gerald's face in real time. I watched it happen. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't bother to know your own daughter. A ripple ran through the room. Someone at table 8 pulled out a phone. Diane jumped up. "She's making this all up." She reached for Bradley's hand. He stepped back. His hand stayed at his side. Barbara tried next. She approached Margaret with her hostess smile at full power. "Margaret, please, this is a family matter." "You made it a public matter, Mrs. Marsh. When you put it on a 10-foot screen." The room exhaled, 200 people breathing out at once. Gerald tried to recover. He spent 62 years recovering. It's what he does. "Margaret, let's not overreact. It was a silly joke. You know how families are." "I know how my family is." Margaret's voice was even. "We don't put our children's medical records on a screen for entertainment." She turned to Bradley. "Son, I think we need to have a conversation." "Privately, tonight," Bradley nodded. He'd been watching Diane since the reveal. His expression wasn't anger, it was something worse. Reevaluation. "You told me Carol was unstable." He said to Diane, "that she had issues. That she was jealous." "She is jealous. She's a licensed architect with awards, Diane. And you put Infertile on a screen at our wedding." Gerald stepped toward Margaret, dropping his voice. "Let's talk about the Maplewood partnership." "This has nothing to do with..." Margaret raised one hand. One gesture. That's all it took. The Maplewood partnership. She repeated it like she was tasting something spoiled. "Gerald, after what I just witnessed, there is no Maplewood partnership." Gerald's mouth opened. Nothing came out. His hand dropped to his side. Margaret wasn't finished. "The Maplewood project." Her voice carried the flat precision of someone who manages a multi-million-dollar foundation. "You told us the land was fully consolidated under Marsh Properties. Every parcel accounted for." Gerald stiffened. "It is." "I wasn't planning this. I hadn't rehearsed it. But I heard the words Maplewood and fully consolidated and something clicked. Actually, I said, "It's not." The room turned to me. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the folded photocopy. The center parcel, the one my grandmother gave me when I was 16, is still in my name. I have the deed right here. Gerald's face went rigid. The private kind, the kind I remembered from that kitchen table when I was 18. Margaret looked at the paper, then at Gerald. "You were going to build on land belonging to your own daughter without her consent, without telling us." "She was supposed to sign it over years ago. I was 18. You tried to force me. I said no. You threw me out. And you've been telling people that land was yours ever since." I folded the deed and put it back in my pocket. Richard Whitmore stood for the first time. He buttoned his jacket, the small, deliberate motion men make when they're about to leave permanently. Margaret met Gerald's eyes one final time. "Mr. Marsh, I think we're done here." Gerald turned to me. His voice dropped to something raw and small. "You ungrateful," Bradley stepped forward. Sharp. Final. "That's enough, Mr. Marsh." Something in Barbara fractured. She'd held it together for 40 years. The smile, the posture, the hostess mask. But the Whitmores were walking away. The deal was dead. And the room was looking at her family the way she'd spent her entire life making sure they never would. She turned on me. The polish gone. "You think you're better than us. You think your little slides change anything. You were nothing. You had nothing when you left this house. You're right." I said it quietly. "I had nothing because you made sure of that." "I did what was best for this family. You did what was best for the image. There's a difference." She looked around the room, searching for an ally. Country club friends, book club members, women she'd had lunch with for 20 years. She tried the social smile. "Family drama. You know how it is." Nobody smiled back. Then a voice rose from the back. The older woman from the church, the one with reading glasses on a chain. She stood slowly, gripping the edge of her table. "I've known Dorothy Marsh for 50 years. Her voice was thin but carried through the silent room. "She would be ashamed of what you three did tonight." She picked up her clutch and walked toward the exit, measured, final. Another couple stood, then a man at table 9, no speeches. No drama, they just left. Barbara sank into the nearest chair. Her hand found her wine glass, but she didn't lift it. For the first time, she looked exactly her age, maybe older. The room was emptying, and no one was pretending it was a joke anymore. I looked at what was left. My family. This room. 16 years of silence, ending here between dessert plates and half-empty champagne flutes. I didn't go to the microphone. My voice carried just fine in a room this quiet. I didn't come here to ruin your wedding, Diane. I looked at my sister. I came because Grandma Dorothy asked me to. Because even after everything, she still believes this family can be better. Diane's head dropped. I don't hate any of you. I looked at Gerald, at Barbara. But I am done being your punchline. I'm done earning the right to exist in this family. Gerald's eyes finally lifted to mine. They were red. I'd never seen that before. If you want me in your life, it starts with respect. Not conditions, not performances. Respect. I picked up my clutch from table 14. Straightened my navy dress, the one I bought myself. And if you can't do that, then this is goodbye. I walked toward the exit. Past Gerald, he didn't look up. Past Barbara, staring at the tablecloth. Past Diane, she turned her face away. At the door, a voice stopped me. Miss Marsh. I turned. Margaret Whitmore stood near the coat check. Green jacket already on, car keys in her hand. Monday morning. My office. We have a project to finish. I nodded. She nodded back. And I walked out into the October night. Now I need to know, if this were your family, would you have pressed begin or would you have walked away? Drop a 1 for begin or a 2 for walk away in the comments. And stay with me, because what happens after that night is something I never planned for. The parking lot was half empty. I sat in my car with the engine off, hands on the wheel, staring at the country club entrance. A tap on my window. Frank, still in his AV company polo, holding 2 gas station coffees. He slid into the passenger seat and handed me one. You okay? No, I wrapped both hands around the cup. But I'm better than I've been in years. We sat in silence. Through the windshield, couples walked fast toward their cars. A man loosened his tie. Nobody was laughing. My phone buzzed. Bradley, I'm sorry for what my wife's family did. Diane and I need to talk. I don't know where this goes. Another buzz. Nancy, your grandmother saw everything. Someone's niece was live streaming the reception to a family group chat. Dorothy watched the whole thing. She's laughing. She says, that's my girl. I closed my eyes. Dorothy in her nursing home bed watching her granddaughter stand up in a room full of people who tried to make her invisible. Laughing. Proud. One more. Margaret Whitmore, I've informed my team about the Maplewood land situation. Gerald will not be building on your property. I typed back to Margaret, thank you. To Nancy, tell her I love her. I didn't respond to Gerald, Barbara, or Diane. There was nothing to say that wasn't already said in that room. Frank started the car. Where to? Hotel. Then home tomorrow. In the rearview mirror, the country club shrank. Clarksburg is a small town, and small towns do what they do best. They talk. The week after the wedding, Clarksburg rearranged itself. Barbara was quietly removed from the autumn gala planning committee. Gerald lost 2 business partners within 10 days. Diane and Bradley, he asked for couples counseling. She refused. By the second week, he packed a bag and moved into his parents' guest house. I didn't follow any of this in real time. I was in Columbus, back at my desk, back at my drafting table. One afternoon, Frank read me a post from the Clarksburg Community Facebook page. Someone had shared a photo of the slideshow screen. This happened at the Whitmore Marsh wedding. Shame on the Marshes. 87 reactions, 42 comments. You didn't do this to them, Frank said, closing his laptop. I know. They did this to themselves. I just stopped covering for it. 3 weeks after the wedding, Gerald called. He didn't start with an apology. He started with an offer. The land. Name your price. Let's end this like adults. The land isn't for sale. It was Grandma Dorothy's gift to me. It stays mine. You're destroying this family over a piece of dirt. You destroyed this family over a piece of dirt 16 years ago when you chose a parcel over your daughter. Silence long. I did what I thought was right, he said finally. So did I, and here we are. I waited for more. An apology. A crack in the wall he spent 62 years building. Instead, he hung up. I set the phone down. My hands weren't shaking. My heart rate was normal. There was a time when a call from Gerald Marsh would have sent me spiraling for days. That time was over. I went back to my blueprints. 2 weeks later, on a Sunday morning, Diane called. The voice on the other end didn't sound like her. Flat, tired, stripped of performance. Bradley moved out. Mom won't stop crying. Dad won't talk to anyone. I didn't interrupt. The slideshow was wrong, I know that. She stopped. Started again. I don't know why I did it. I've been doing things like that my whole life and nobody ever told me to stop. Because they were too busy doing it to me. A shaky exhale. Yeah. Silence. I don't know who I am without being the favorite, she said. And it was the most honest thing my sister had ever spoken. I could have been cruel, I had enough ammunition. But cruelty is their language. Not mine. Then maybe it's time you figured that out. Can we start over? I don't know. But we can start with you talking to someone, a professional, not mom, not dad. Someone who will actually tell you the truth. A long pause. Okay. Neither of us said I love you. Neither of us said goodbye. We just sat on the phone for a few more seconds, breathing. Then the line went quiet. The following Saturday, I drove to Riverside Hills. No phone call to Gerald. No 30-minute limit. No Barbara in the hallway checking her lipstick. I just went. Nancy met me at the front desk with a smile that said she'd been waiting for this visit. She's in the sunroom. Strong morning. She watched your slideshow video again at breakfast. 5th time. She made me replay the part where Margaret said, "You didn't bother to know your own daughter." She clapped. The sunroom was warm and bright. Potted ferns on the windowsills. Grandma Dorothy sat in a wheelchair by the glass, a crocheted blanket across her lap, her white hair catching the sun. She saw me and her whole face opened up. Not a hostess smile. The real thing. The kind that starts in the eyes and fills every line and crease. She grabbed my hand the second I sat down. You stood up. She said it simply, like a fact. In that room full of people, you stood up. You taught me how, Grandma. She squeezed my fingers. Now tell me about your buildings. Tell me about your life. We have time. So I told her all of it. The GED, the diner shifts, college, the first project I designed, a small library in a town nobody's heard of. The courthouse, the awards, the apartment with the drafting table by the window. She listened to every word, asked questions, laughed at the parts where I'd slept in my car and eaten cereal 3 nights a week. Nobody knocked on the door. Nobody said time's up. Outside the window, an oak tree spread its branches across the lawn. Old, rooted, deep. Like the one on the land Dorothy gave me when I turned 16. Some things can't be signed away. 3 months later. Monday morning. Coffee in hand. On my office wall, a new framed print, the Clarksburg Heritage Project rendering. The textile mill as it will look after restoration. Red brick, arched windows, a courtyard open to the sky. Margaret's foundation approved the final design last week. Next month, I present to the Clarksburg Town Council. I'll stand in front of the same people who watched me get humiliated at a wedding and show them what I'm actually building. Dorothy's surgery went well. No complications. She's in physical therapy now, walking with a frame, complaining about the food. I visit every 2 weeks. It's peaceful. Gerald hasn't called again. Barbara sent a single text. I'm sorry. 2 words, no follow-up. I read it. I didn't respond. I'm not ready. I may never be. That's allowed. Diane started therapy. Bradley moved back in on the condition they continue counseling. She visited Dorothy at the nursing home last week. First time in over a year. She brought flowers. Dorothy said Diane looked different. Quieter. I don't know what that means yet, but it's something. This morning, I stand in front of my bedroom mirror. Navy blazer, white blouse, hair pulled back. On my dresser, the invitation to the Clarksburg Town Council presentation. My name printed in clean black type. Carol Marsh. Senior architect. Not C. Marsh. Not Robert's name. Not a hyphenation for professional convenience. Just mine. 6 months ago, I sat in the last row of a church and watched my father shake hands like he owned the world. 4 months ago, I stood in a banquet hall while my body was turned into a joke for 200 people. Today, I'm driving back to Clarksburg, but I'm not going to the old house. I'm not going to beg for a seat at anyone's table. I'm going to the textile mill, the one I'm rebuilding from the foundation up, brick by brick, beam by beam, the way I rebuilt everything else. They called me infertile, divorced, failure, dropout, broke, alone. I am some of those things, and none of them define me. You don't need your family's permission to have a life worth living. You just need to stop asking for it. I take my keys. I walk out the door. The October sun is sharp and clean. The way it gets in Ohio when the leaves are turning and the air smells like woods and cold mornings. I drive west, toward Clarksburg, toward the building I'm restoring for a town that doesn't know my whole story yet, but will. The road stretches ahead. The cornfields rise gold in the distance. And I'm not going home. I'm going to work. That's my story. And if you've made it to the end, I think some part of it belongs to you too. Here's what I want to ask. Don't just tell me how you felt. Tell me what you're going to do differently after hearing this. Set one boundary this week. Just one. If you chose begin earlier, hit subscribe. I'll be sharing another story soon that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about family loyalty. Check the description for more stories like this one. Thank you for being here. It means more than you know.